Alright, back on the Civic engine transmission removal. The engine tranny's been out for a while now, finally getting back to it. The reason I'm doing this is the rear main seal in the engine was bad, leaking oil. So, first things first is you're going to want to remove your starter bolts. There's one there, and the other one is right there. Undo your power cable and your little push on, and those two bolts in the starter will pull out of the place. You do that, and then you can take out the bell housing bolts. Starter comes out. Now you can move on to the bell housing bolts. The starter bolts are 14 millimeter. Bell housing bolts are 17 millimeter. Some of them are a little tight. There's one up under here. I broke a few of these loose. Sorry about this. Doing this with the camera phone so you guys can get in here. Moving the motor around so I can see what I'm doing here. Now there's some smaller ones down here on the oil pan reinforcement brackets. So you'll have to get them out as well. Now that the two pieces are apart, you can see the motor oil that's been getting slung up in here. Yeah, definitely been leaking for a while. And you can see the lines of motor oil getting slung off the transmission. Definitely getting slung around in there. So we're gonna pull the back of the motor off, the clutch, the flywheel, and check out the rear main seal. The clutch bolts are 10 millimeter, but you have to use a 12-point socket because they are 12-point bolts. Alright, once you get the clutch off, then you can take the flywheel off. There are 17 millimeter 12-point bolts, so you need a 12-point socket. The only 12-point socket I have is 17 millimeters, this guy, so we're going to see what she does. Alright, so I'm going to go back to this. These bolts have Loctite on them, so they're going to come out pretty hard. And they will get Loctite to go back in. But this flywheel should pull off. Might need to pry it off a little bit. See if we can see why this is leaking. Alright, we're back on this 1.7 Honda Civic motor. I put the rear main seal in and I resealed the oil pan to the block. To do the rear main seal, I mean, you could try to dig it out of here from this outer side, but that's a real pain, and you probably want to reseal this cover anyway with new Permatex. So you drop the oil pan, and you take out these 4 bolts and this plastic cover pops off. Pop the oil seal out of that, and I like to put a little bit of Permatex in there and then slide the seal into the Permatex, a very, very thin bead, and that way it seals the seal to the outer part and it doesn't leak past. And then put this plate back on, torque down your bolts, seal your oil pan back on. Now we're gonna put this thing back together. New parts here on the table. First up, a new Luck clutch kit from Rock Auto. Rock Auto, gotta get the magnet. I refuse the orders if they don't come with magnets. This is, you got the pilot bearing, your line of tools and grease. This is just a factory replacement clutch. Nothing special. Just a regular old clutch disc. Move that stuff out of there. Get that out of the way. New throttle bearing. New pilot bearing. Gotta have that magnet. Then we got the flywheel. Ordered a new flywheel. I had a lightweight flywheel on this car and I did not like the way the engine drove. This is the lightweight flywheel. It's an ACT. It's actually SFI certified and everything. But I'm not putting this back on because I do not race this car and I didn't like the way the engine ran with that. You lose a lot of top end. And since it's a daily driver, you have the air conditioning on. Before I put this on, and you turn the AC on, the engine would just run normal. Well, with this on there, since you lose a bunch of rotating mass, the AC makes the engine shake, makes the whole car shake. I thought it was the air conditioning, but turns out it's the lightweight flywheel. There's not enough mass to keep the motor turning at idle. To make the air conditioning not effective. So we're gonna go another Luke, however you want to say it, L-U-K. Another factory replacement flywheel. And pretty, brand new parts are always pretty. Get that out of the way. And we'll get this thing prepped for install. First is open up our accessory bag here. Made in Korea. This will probably last real long. Well, this one's not too bad. It's got a good bit of grease in it. You just pop the seal out. And I'm going to put a little bit more grease in there just for the heck of it. Bearing, it's a press fit, but it's not horrible. It. Flip it over. Make sure it's butted up flush against the flange. And it is. Alright. You don't necessarily need a bearing and race tool or seal tool, but I have it. I'm gonna use it. Okay, so I located the hardware. It is down there on the floor in bags next to the starter. I put this table up over top of it and forgot where I put it. I know, chrome socket on an impact, I know, but it's the only 12.19 millimeter I have. And that's what these are. Oh my God, that's not what they are. Correction, 17 millimeter. 17 millimeter 12 point. Medium strength Loctite on these bolts into the crank. Make sure you use Loctite. Medium strength blue Loctite is what you want to use. Got to make sure that's cleaned out real good. This little indentation here, make sure this is cleaned out of trash, because the pilot bearing sits inside here, the other side of it. And if it's not clean of trash, it'll bind it up. Alright, that looks good. Make sure your holes are cleaned out for your threads. Because if you leave dirt and stuff in there and you thread your bolts in, you're going to hydrolock the bolts. Get one started. Loctite. Make sure you get all these started. Get them all started evenly before you run them down. But this is the only engine stand I have at the moment. Just run them all in. It actually, the first bolt I started to tighten up, it actually drew it in and made it fall into place. Gotta love dads that had tools and left them to you. Flywheel, holding tool. Let's see what happens here. So the old Googler says 87 foot-pounds for these. I'm sure they're already past that. Oh yeah. Before you put your clutch disc on, you need to clean this with some brake clean. You're just trying to get that assembly oil off of there. That oil that they put on there from shipping. Keep it rust free. Wish I had a proper engine stand for this thing. Same thing with the pressure plate. See, there's some kind of oil on there. Same thing with the pressure plate. Try to put it on evenly. Line up your pins. Pin there, pin there. There's one down here in this lower corner here as well. Like that. And your bolts. I like to put a little bit of medium Loctite on here as well. Like I said, medium. You can even use low if you want. Alright, so you got your 10 millimeter 12-point socket. Just run these down evenly. Just kind of go around little by little. I'm going to slide this in and out and make sure there's no binding, because if that binds up going in, you're going to have a rough day getting your tranny to line up. So the pressure plate bolts look like they're anywhere from 19 to 24 foot-pounds. I know my Milwaukee Impact does heavier than that, so I'm just going to leave them alone. They're Loctited, they're not coming out. It's not a race car. Alright, well, I'm going to put some spline lube in here. Put a little bit on here. And I'm going to slide it in. Working into the splines. Now you're ready for the transmission. On the transmission side, you want to put your new throwout bearing on. Spring into this slot. Right here, this slot goes like this. And this is just trial and error. It's been a while since I had this transmission out. Oh yeah, it's much better. Just so you know, it only fits one way. So you want to make sure that the little clip comes out here and then on either side here, and that'll hold the shift fork in place and allow it to work. Pretty simple. A little bit of brake lubricant on here. This is the brake lubricant I use, Civic. Just put a tiny bit. Put some in here, just because. And that's it. Now she's ready to go together. Alright, transmission's back together. We're back onto the engine. Put in my 5 bell housing bolts. Now we're going to put the starter back on. .15 millimeter. She's about ready to go back in the car.